Alright, there are many stories of rash vows with disastrous consequences throughout history, legend and myth. A Welsh tale speaks of a prince granting a guest whatever he desires, and the guest chooses to marry the prince's wife. Jephthah of the Old Testament, in exchange for divine aid in battle, vowed to sacrifice the first thing to come out of his house, which turned out to be his only daughter. A ruler's vow to repay the creator of chess in grains of rice or wheat, corresponding to the spaces on the board, doubling the amount with each number, resulting in over 9 quintillion grains on the final square. And then there was me, during a charity event earlier this year, raising money for Hope for the Day, together with other Souls Challenge runners.
Sure, 33,000 and I'll make it all bosses.
36,000 and I will commit to doing just like Kane did for Bloodborne without using anything at all. If we get to 36,000 I will do Demon Souls without using anything at all. No equipment of any kind. No items, no armor, no weapons, nothing.
Alrighty, let's see if we can hit those two. The question is not, is it even possible? The question is, are you going to make that Presses problem?
And well, we did in fact reach that goal. Which is great for the charity, of course, very happy about that, but not so great for me. Because now I'm stuck with a seemingly insurmountable task to beat Demon Souls using nothing at all. Which does have a specific context though. You might be familiar with Scumnut doing Dark Souls 3 any percent, and Game at Micah did 100% recently, and I'm basically using the same rules. Using nothing simply entails that I cannot make use of any type of equipment or inventory. No weapons, no armor, no rings, no healing items, no consumables, and in fact in this particular case, not even key items. Well, there is this weird little crotch light that you automatically have and you cannot get rid of, so perhaps crotch light only would be another suitable name for this challenge. Now, you can still level up, but only with souls obtained directly from enemies, since those are not some type of an item that you have in your inventory. However, boss souls and the like most certainly are, and are therefore not allowed, meaning that leveling up will be severely limited until we can find a suitable farming spot that is feasible to make use of using only your bare fists. Now, of course, there are bound to be people that are like, but that's not really nothing. You are still using levers, you are using ladders, you are using a controller and a screen, you're breathing oxygen, you exist within the space-time continuum. Well, fortunately for those people, I did this run twice, with both sets of restrictions. So first up, allow me to present to you Demon Souls using literally absolutely nothing. Alright, I hope you all enjoyed that playthrough. Fortunately, since time is also something, that took literally no time to make. But for everyone else who won't make a fuss about nothing, I hope that the premise is clear. But something that someone is bound to make a fuss over, because it happens every time, is probably the fact that I'm playing the remake and not the original. However, there are actually a few minor differences in the remake that will be absolutely vital for this challenge, as you might not expect, but as you will see. And one hell of a challenge it is indeed. But then again, how hard could it be, since there is literally nothing to it? Or at the very least, we have nothing left to lose.
You have nothing left but your death.
You know what? I do have something. I have the support of my viewers, and I have a heart of gold, and I won't let anyone take that from me. However, my character has to get rid of all of her starting gear, and being in her underwear also leaves nothing to the imagination. Or perhaps causes some of the viewers to start nutting. Now, in all fairness, going through the journey towards the Nexus serves no practical purpose, since by definition, we don't need to pick up anything whatsoever at any point in the game. However, there's another relevant difference between the original and the remake. Namely, that Bluepoint gave the Vanguard demon floppy butt cheeks. And that is important. But unfortunately, they kept the nonsensical and arbitrarily active hitboxes on his feet, allowing him to, well, I guess theme appropriately, kill me with nothing. But regardless of which version of the game, there is one major difference between Demon's Souls and the later titles in the Soul franchise. Most Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne and Elden Ring Challenge Run videos are essentially boss fight compilations, as it's easy to circumvent having to interact with anything in between. But Demon's Souls is very different in that regard, as its level design is not particularly friendly to you simply running past everything in order to avoid all of the regular enemies. Now, under normal circumstances, you can at least facilitate that with the Thieves Ring and by using soul remains to distract enemies. But neither of those are options available to me in this challenge. We have nothing to fall back on, except our own skill and wit. But the enemies have everything, not merely equipment, but also things like narrow pathways, making it a massive nuisance trying to squeeze by enemies without fighting them. In fact, there will be many cases where you simply won't have a choice but to fight them. And when all you can resort to is a bare-knuckle brawl, you will be forced to work your fingers to the bone. So the reason I started as the Barbarian class is because my only means of attacking is by using my bare fist, which scales exclusively with strength. On top of that, the Barbarian starts with the highest amount of vitality, because remember that healing items are forbidden as well. Not to mention that I cannot use the Cling Ring either, meaning that I only have half of my health bar in soul form. So I really need to make my HP count and last. Which is no easy feat when you also cannot deal damage safely and in meaningful amounts. So right before the bridge, because of the two spear soldiers, as well as the knight behind me chasing me, I couldn't wait for the dragon to clear out the bridge, meaning I had to somehow maneuver my way through all of the enemies. Which, when you have nothing, is nothing but trouble. Okay, and now I'm definitely not going to make it. Oh my god! Yeah, there's no way to deal with the soldiers here. Like, what else can I do than just run past everything? Oh! Holy crap! Yeah! Pull, pull! Yes! Oh, yeah, I did it! Okay. Rest of the stream. Phalanx. Failing against the Phalanx. Basically, that spear is like symbolic of my tombstone, essentially. Well, I might as well die, then I can quickly get back. Well, it might not have been a matter of burning bridges behind me, but it might already have been a bridge too far. Because the encounter with the first true boss of the run already gave me Phalanxiety. Or better said, the innocuous blob up ahead might already be a hill to die on, and be the thing to put the mountain in insurmountable. Because remember that before defeating the Phalanx, you cannot level up yet. Heck, you cannot even summon anyone. Basically, the entire rest of the game is locked off until you defeat it. And this is a boss who is defended by, to my knowledge at least, 35 hoplites, all with independently operating AIs, throwing spears at you from off-screen, or through the boss itself, or even through each other. And with how little health I have available, I can only take 4 hits at best. The thing is that I have defeated the Phalanx before with my bare fists. Even worse than that, I was only using the awkward uppercut attack. You know, the one that misses half the time. Meaning it was a 30-minute fight in the end. But the reason I made it through was because I had healing items available. And sure, I also have defeated the Phalanx without taking damage before. But that was with a substantial damage output. Especially elemental damage that practically negates the hoplite's shields. But the combination of doing terrible damage and having a tiny margin of error makes this fight unthinkable. In fact, I can't even find any example anywhere of anyone doing something comparable to these circumstances in the Phalanx fight. The closest thing I could find was a Needle of Eternal Agony run, which still actually did decent damage through the hoplite shields, by the way. But the method they used to prevent taking damage in the process was by throwing dozens and dozens and dozens of soul remains against the wall. Not an option available to me. Now you might be thinking, well, if you just take things really slowly and really carefully, then you could slowly whittle down the health of each individual hoplite. Well, no, for two reasons. One, the hoplites can heal. Whenever they reattach to the boss, they will regenerate their health. In fact, when they get low on health, they have a tendency to automatically retreat back to the boss in order to regain their health. So you can't take things slowly. And the second problem, since we are dealing with 35 enemies throwing spears at you that you cannot see or even hear coming, and even when you are running around you are still not guaranteed to not get hit, and whenever you need to attack, you are vulnerable unless the hoplite in question is completely isolated and behind a pillar. Which rarely even happens, as especially when most of them are still alive, they really tend to cluster together. Not to mention that they can also stab their spears right through each other, or even through the sides of the pillars. So, final option then. Create an open spot on the side of the boss and attack the boss directly. And yes, that can be done with a high damage output, but not with a low one. Because, just like how the boss can heal the hoplites in turn can heal the boss. Moreover, the hoplites can still hit you right through the boss anyway. This is not going to be feasible. And there are no known glitches that can help me either. The simple but harsh fact of the matter is, the run hasn't even really started yet. And I already cannot continue, no matter how hard I press. We have hit a solid brick wall right out of the gate of Boletaria, because that's the name given to stage 1-1. In essence, it would be more appropriate to refer to these enemies as stoplights instead, as these agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. made me Nick furious. I have inadvertently put all of the emphasis on the first half of the boss's name. I made a promise, and I cannot keep it. I have failed. Irony of all ironies, there is nothing I can do.
We are indebted to you, for you fight on our behalf.
I'm a loser. I'm not the hero you thought I was. I'm nothing.
Come on, it cannot end like this. Sure, it would be easy to say, well, sorry for promising it, but it's not possible, so I'll just call it quits. Easy, done, move on. No, if I did that, all the people who donated during the charity event would say to me, that's uncharitably done, dear friend. And they would be right. No, we cannot accept that. For now, we consider the Phalanx a failure. So we are simply going to skip this boss for now. As in switching to another character who already defeated this boss but made no progress beyond it yet. Remove all of her equipment. And then let's see if I can at least beat the rest of the game using nothing. However, that doesn't mean we are done with the Phalanx. Let's stick a giant scraping spear shaped pin in that boss for now. But at the end of the video, we are going to re-ponder this conundrum. Well, after such a terrible black stain on the page of the first chapter of this drama, there was at least a faint light in the distance. Namely the prospect of obtaining pure white character tendency, which raises your attack power by 20% while in soul form. And there is in fact a way to obtain that already at this point in the game, which requires no item of any kind on my part. It merely requires some jolly cooperation, or perhaps I should say some jolly antagonization. Namely, invasions. Some of my viewers serving as sacrificial lambs to raise my character tendency all the way to pure white. Well, at least that was the plan. But then, JK Leeds decided to firestorm me into oblivion. Which he insisted he did by pure accident and he was very sorry about it. Apologies Christ, JK. That sure sounds very believable. We all know that JK is always scheming. He is very conniving. And to make it worse, invasions require you to be in body form, which I can only obtain by defeating a boss. Stones of ephemeral ice are not allowed after all. So now I was not yet in pure white character tendency, meaning without my desired damage boost. But JK said JK, so I guess all is forgiven, right? I am also just kidding when I say that I hope that you will get arrested for JK walking and suffer a bad case of lead poisoning. Okay, anyway, gedane zaken nemen geen keer, as we say over here. And I suppose that the storm of a shrine variety is still preferable to a storm of the fire variety. But not by much. Farming a few skeletons for some early levels sounds like a good idea. But even though your bare fists are quite well known for being incredibly viable against the rolling skeletons, because of their immense weakness to blunt damage. However, without a shield, backstabbing them is a nightmare, as they just keep rolling with ravenous rotational rancor, earning them the nickname Skeletornado. Now sure, if they decide to stop short, you can get behind them. But more often than you would like, they will go full Limp Bizkit mode and just keep rolling. It is incredibly RNG dependent. And I would have to get favorable RNG 6 times in a row to make it all the way past them. Well, at least I was slowly building up some souls for some early levels. Because again, remember that poppable souls are items and therefore not allowed. So I can only level up from what I earn by defeating enemies. But eventually I would have to get actually past them in order to complete the stage. And using the environment to your advantage only works when you have a weapon with some reach, like stabbing them after making them get stuck against something. So the only thing I could do to prevent going completely out of my skull was to counter their rolling with some rolling of my own. Not consistent in the slightest, but well, we are playing a role-playing game. Unfortunately, because I cannot wear the Thieves Ring, their aggro range is much higher than I'm used to, so luring them over one by one was already a pain in the boner. Not to mention that the bow skeleton was putting the Rs in archery. So even if I would end up emerging victorious, it would be a narrow victory indeed. But now we still have one more skeleton and in the most annoying place you can imagine. Not to mention that there's an archer and those 2 archers are also aggro. Hold on, let's quickly get out of their aggro range. Oh, didn't work. Run. Oh, but can I even survive the fall damage now? Let me guess, now I'm actually going to die from fall damage. Oh, I'm still alive. I have 9 HP remaining. And I almost got killed by an archer there. Oh my lord. Well, I finally made it, but with so little health to spare that I cannot even survive dropping down into the Adjudicator's arena. Requiring me to take the long way around and risk receiving a stern tongue lashing from the boss. Which is pretty much the only other attack that he can do. Because once you are in front of him, well, let's just say that design-wise, providing the boss with an extensive moveset was not exactly From Software's first priority. In essence, this giant hunk of meat is like the beefy patty on a big nothing burger. So unless you get stuck against a pillar, which I of course would never let happen, you'll discover that even with bare fists, he finds a punch to his wounded gut pretty hard to stomach, resulting in a belly flop and a loss of his bird's eye perspective. Now of course, given that my punches for the bird on his head would only have tickled like a little feather, I would have to repeat this process multiple times over. And to be fair, when it came to my stamina management, when punching this foul, I was pretty much just winging it, and even though you can't spell that without win, I was still pretty fearful that he would be able to get up again with only 1 HP remaining. Still, putting your hand to a bird is not as good as having a hand in someone's bush, or whatever the saying is supposed to be. I guess that's kind of up in the air. And although the designers didn't pay much attention to a moveset, in the remake, like how the Vanguard has flappy butt cheeks, Flappy Bird Brain over here has flappy nipples. Although in that sense they chose the wrong animal for his head, as it's a well-known fact that the animal with the largest breasts is the zebra. Let me guess, he's going to have like 1 HP left and then he's going to stand up and I have to make him fall down again. Correct? No! Exactly what I said! Oh. Okay. That's not exactly what I said. For some reason he was able to stand back up or something. My tongue is basically now in the same position as his tongue was after that. Okay, See you later, adjudicator. Or as the French would say, adjudicator. Or something along those lines. If it's not regarding cheese or wine, nobody really pays attention to what the French have to say. But excuse my French if I say that with the exception of Trueland, that was pretty much the most piss-easy excuse of a boss in the entire franchise. But hey, making actual progress using nothing is nothing to scoff at. And now that I'm in body form again, I can get invaded again. Not by JK this time, fortunately, which allowed me to actually reach pure white character tendency for that coveted 20% extra damage output in soul form. And we can immediately make use of that, since we now have the perfect farming spot by killing the Reaper. Okay, I guess not yet then. Jeez, and that was with 30 strength and the 20% damage boost from white character tendency. Crapalicious. Well, in that case we'll go to stage 1-2, instead of worrying about how to properly farm the Reaper. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. That is, if we weren't prevented from crossing this bridge by a couple of crossbows. Wouldn't seem like an issue, but normally I would distract the 4 crossbow soldiers with a soul remain, or straight up kill them depending on what type of a playthrough it is. However, neither was an option this time, and I obviously want to preserve my health for the boss fight. And even when I manage to get past them, they need to de-aggro first so that they cannot shoot me in the back while I wait for the dragon. And I think it's fair to say that I've gotten way too used to wearing the Thieves Ring, to the point of it becoming a bit of a crutch. Because now, all of a sudden, enemies seem to have unreasonable aggro ranges. But after making it to the end of the bridge and zigzagging my way to the fog wall, well, let's just say that my approach should have been a little less bold. First of all, it would be nice to arrive at the boss with a little more health in the first place. And speaking of remaining health, the problem is I don't do enough damage to kill the soldiers before knocking them over the edge. Meaning they can still snipe me while being inadvertently protected by being in the boss's vicinity. Well, not to worry, even though we are barehanded, we do have a secret weapon, metaphorically speaking. Because the running attack, which inflicts over double the amount of damage of a standard R1, can kill every soldier before knocking them over the edge. And I said can, not necessarily will. Now, the boss himself might be a towering behemoth motherfucker and a pillar of the community, but when he stands alone, it doesn't take that much to tear him down from his ivory tower, as his moveset is rather simplistic, and having not 1 but 2 Achilles heels means that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Yeah, the Tower Knight is no longer a knight who goes to war. Toward. The boss is dead. Yay, progress. However, early game bosses, especially when you're not allowed to use their boss soul, don't exactly provide you with many souls to level up with. And it's a tough choice. More vitality is obviously extremely welcome, but when your health is already cut in half, each individual level only provides a tiny addition to your HP. And conversely, the lower your damage output, the longer any fight will take, meaning more opportunities to take damage in the first place. So therefore I decided to simply focus on leveling up strength first, which caps at 50, and only then start leveling up my vitality, instead of the other way around, or focusing on both evenly. Of course, none of those 3 options are ideal, but one option is ideal, namely choosing that as my next boss on the list. But you might wonder, how can you possibly make your way down the Tower of Latria without using any keys? Well, in the original you can't, but the remake has an interesting quirk where if you quit out of the game and you load back in, the hit detection on certain objects takes a few seconds more to load in, allowing you to get on top of these caskets and then gracefully, goddammit, and then gracefully roll down, son of a fuck, and then gracefully roll down into that alcove on the first try after a few attempts, allowing you access to the bottom floor without picking up any key items. But unfortunately, the fall damage does deplete some of your valuable and limited health bar. But then we take what we have learned from the Skeleboys before, after which we make sure that the whole boss reviving minion situation gets resurrectified. Then we zigzag around the invisible NPC. And finally, we get stuck for almost 2 hours on one of the easiest bosses in Soul's history. Yes, that happened. Because of the stupid invisible traps on the floor. Yeah. As I would say to any of my fellow countrymen, who might happen to be watching, hier word ik niet idol enthousiast van. So why exactly was this boss fight such a problem under these circumstances? Because our damage output did not appear to be that horrendous. However, it was still low enough to quite significantly extend the fight. And then your margin of error becomes an issue. Because if I would leave the boss's OnlyFans subscribers alive, they would get their sticky hands all over me before I could obliterate their Oshi. But if I would kill them all first, I would lose the only thing that could potentially reveal where the traps are, as they can activate them as well. Not to mention that it was a constant issue that I would knock the boss back with each punch, which more often than I would like, which in all fairness would have been any number higher than 0, could result in me launching myself into another hidden trap. Remember, the name of the boss is the Fool's Idol. She is not a fool, we are. Well, one benefit at least was that over the course of so many failed attempts, I was finally able to figure out what that curious piece of wood is that she is holding. No, it's not there to symbolize how her followers are holding their wood. And it's also not some sort of a magical totem or an oversized magic wand. No, it is a tree branch. Specifically a branch from an idolatry. So, at least I got something out of this fight. Because joy was certainly not it. No trap, please. No trap. No trap. No! There's a trap here! Shut the fuck up! Absolute goddamn fucking horseshit. Be the real. Yes! Oh, yeah. Oh! Finally! Fucking RNG fuckfest lottery bullfuckery fucking motherfucking sucky wacky. How many other letters do you have? Holy fucking shit. Yeah, finally the easier parts of the run are done. Unfortunately, being an early game boss as well, she doesn't provide you with that many $I of soulish currency. And it doesn't help that our 20% damage boost relies on being in soul form. Basically sacrificing half your health bar for a 20% damage boost. Although it is pretty much par for the course to self-delete in the Nexus in order to preserve your world tendency. But unfortunate for me, the world does not have a tendency to preserve me, or any humanity or sanity that I might have left within me. You would think that this part would only be a minor inconvenience, but not so sure yet. Especially the doggos here, 3 of them at once. Can't use soul remains or anything. No! I can't have 2 at the same time! Dude, I only have 1 more hit that I can take. I don't think this is happening. Then we have the fat minister here that can shoot fire at me. And he essentially has proto boys. Damn, I can't get behind him like that. Yeah, no. Fuck! Not engage with the miners here. Maybe that will save time. And yeah, but the problem is, how can... Because here there's an enemy. Hold on. By the way, they also have hyper armor when they attack. Well, at least I don't have to deal with the fat minister this way. Huh? His attack hit, my attack didn't. Well, fucking hell.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Hold on, maybe if I keep moving. Yeah, I'm stuck. Yeah, it doesn't work. You just get stuck. It's way too narrow here. Oh! They can jump. Oh, the fucking jump! They can't even see anything, by the way. Yeah, you get stuck. Well, I have to go past it twice anyway, so I have no choice but to kill them. You can't see me even without the fuse ring. Ooh! I always thought I would die from the fall damage. Okay, I didn't. Okay, good. Well, at least we got the shortcut open. Well, it's not a shortcut, by the way. It's just... The shortcut is up ahead, and I'm probably not going to survive that long. Yeah, I can't really go and fight all these enemies, right? But how am I going to get past them? Maybe if I can lure them over here? Yeah, please, don't jump or anything. Yeah, good so far. Don't attack me, good. Alright, now we made it to the shortcut. Awesome. Okay, now we actually made progress. Oh fuck, I have to go to the right. Oh, this is not good. Because this is very narrow. There's one here around the corner. Okay, if I can just get past. Okay, good. Keep moving. Keep moving. Roll, roll. Roll. Roll! I got hit, but that's fine. It was only a tiny bit of damage. Okay, that's good. But now we still have 3 doggos to deal with. Oh, and they can hit right through the floor. Of course. Why would I expect anything else? Keep moving. Just keep moving. Survive and open up the shortcut. That's what this is about. Survive and open up. No! No!
You get nothing! You lose!
Yeah, it's not merely the Thieves' Ring, but also soul remains that tend to become a crutch over the years. And when taken away, you'll end up walking with one. Although running up to the armored spider is also a bit more risky without the Thieves' Ring, as she can start firing fire at you much earlier. Although, as long as she doesn't do the delayed web shot, it really isn't all that bad. However, I did get a little bit too greedy when I saw the quite decent amount of damage that I could inflict. Regardless, since it would still require a few cycles to get through this fight anyway, I should actually only have attacked after she falls down, since that has no hitbox in front of her. Because, although you can dodge through her swipe attacks, more often than not this will push you back, or even worse, to the side. Because this might be a medieval style game, but regardless, this spider is modern enough for the internet age, as she spins her web worldwide, or arena-wide at least. Yeah, merely touching the side of the arena gets you covered in web as well. Now, for those who know me well, you're probably not very surprised that I didn't really learn from that, and I still try to sneak in hits by rolling through the swipes. Nevertheless, it should be easy to understand that against this spider, you want to press R more, instead of getting less R1 attacks in. Not to mention that when you experience something this Australian, things are bound to go south, making me feel like a shrimp on the Barbie. But hey, if you have seen my recent Bloodborne 1 HP and 1 stamina challenge, and how much I suffered against Rom, you know that I'm nothing if not persistent. So it was just a matter of time before the armored spider was beaten 8 legs from Sunday. However, that does imply that all the early stages are out of the way now, as I absolutely would want to save the entirety of stage 5 for the endgame. And I obviously did not want to go and face Flame Lurker or the Man-Eaters yet. So I had no choice but to go down the darkest depths of stage 4-2. And the old hero has a whopping 4410 HP, if I could even get there in the first place. Now I did manage to kill the Reaper. However, this was way too slow, way too risky, and way too awkward to serve as a quick farming method. At least, that's what I thought. And thus, I was still quite a ways away from the strength cap of 50. And I was still at base health. I also felt kind of silly how I used to approach the first skeletons in this area. Because when you're not wearing the Thieves Ring, you can actually simply lure them off the cliff with a pretty damn high level of consistency. However, the golden versions will put a skeleton of force behind their powerful swings. So only if both do an overhead attack, and pretty much at the same time, it will be truly safe to move past them. Otherwise, you pretty much have to hope for the best, because if you wait too long, then you are at risk at taking a random hit from the storm beast flying around, which is the downside of not wearing the Thieves Ring. What is also a downside is that the unintentional shortcut that existed in the original was probably also unintentionally fixed in the remake, meaning that we had to go past the 2 laser ghosts without using any soul remains. Which would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that the hitbox of the laser is basically like a cylinder around it. So the hitbox is larger than the laser is visually, meaning that you have to dodge earlier than you would think. And also when knocking the Reaper down, he might make the ghost despawn later than you might think. And the ghost in front of the final obstacle respawns almost immediately after killing it. Meaning that you can't even take things slowly with the final laser ghost and the Reaper around the corner. And the thing is that attacking that particular Reaper can have some really janky shenanigans associated with it, as I can still remember clearly from the very first series on my channel. Even after 8 years, I still have no freaking clue how I even died here. Fortunately, I got extremely lucky and the laser ghost decided to walk forward instead, which is very rare behavior. But the thing is that this allowed me to take it, as well as the Reaper, on one-on-one. And after that, nothing stands in your way except the boss himself. While technically there are also these flying sperms that can explode all over your face, or using the medical term spermatozoids. Yeah, that's a whole mouthful. But when I got to the boss, and you might think this is cheap, but in order to prevent having to do this massive run back each time I died against the boss, I did choose to make a cloud save right before the fog wall, because in the end I'm not completely fucking insane. Completely being the operative word here. However, in doing so, I also shot myself in the foot, given that I had almost no health remaining, and that implied that I would have to do the entire boss fight without taking a single hit myself. And because of his massive health pool, it would take 200 R1 attacks for me to take him down, and only a single attack for him to take me down. And sure, his moveset might not be that complicated, but in a fight that lengthy, a lot can still go wrong. Not to mention that without the Thieves Ring to exploit his lack of eyesight, this fight is quite a different experience indeed. Now, I did attempt to abuse the fact that poise wasn't really a thing yet in Demon's Souls. However, hyper armor is. And greed combined with depleting your stamina bar can very easily get you killed. Not to mention that being the first Souls game, there is some questionable amount of jank going on as well. Again, in a fight this long, there are quite a lot of chances for something to go wrong. And thus, I tried for nearly 2 hours until the end of that particular stream, but I did not emerge victorious. And therefore, in between streams, I decided to go back for a massive farming session. And fortunately, I did find a way to consistently farm the Reaper without the ghost bothering me. Because if you roll into him, you can knock him back, and then you can in fact kill him before the ghost can reach you. After which they all despawn for a nice amount of souls, which is exactly why this is a popular farming spot. And yes, I know that it sounds weird for a Dutch guy to hate farming, but I begrudgingly chose to do that also for 2 hours straight, allowing me to get my strength up all the way to the cap of 50 and my vitality to 25, which in all fairness in soul form is still a ridiculously small amount of HP. However, I did actually manage to get back to the old hero with nearly my full health bar intact. I only took a sliver of fall damage at the start. However, you would think that would give me an edge. Well, no, because his sword has more of an edge to it. But at least my damage output had increased substantially, from 22 to 30 per R1 attack. And my running attack would do a whopping 72 damage. Well, whopping in the context of this type of playthrough, that is. But still, without the Thieves Ring, with a few exceptions here and there where he does still lose track of you, for the most part, the hero knows I'm over Darrow. And, oh, hey, how about that? I can in fact survive one attack, depending on what it is. Unfortunately, that makes little difference if you already take that hit early in the fight, meaning that the entire remainder of the fight still has to be done hitless. So my approach was to stick behind his left leg as much as possible, given that being behind his right leg can easily get you clipped by his quick attack. However, when he turns around, he can easily push you right in front of him, meaning you couldn't just stay there and keep attacking. And whenever he creates distance, he can do a quick side slash which is lightning fast and therefore quite hard to avoid. And therefore, instead of using a very aggressive approach or a very passive approach, I chose a sort of middle ground. Be aggressive when behind him, but when he creates distance, be patient and wait for a jump attack. Although sometimes he simply refuses to do that anyway. And whenever he did an AoE attack, which he is more likely to do when you stick behind him by the way, that would give me the opportunity to do my over double damage inflicting running attacks. Which in all fairness is the true unsung hero of this playthrough. Okay. So close. Oh! Oh yeah, got wow, I thought I died there. Oh, yes. Zero is somehow still greater than hero. Yes. Wow, I honestly thought I died there at that final hit. But he somehow managed to miss me. Oh my god, yes. Okay, that is done. Yeah, my heart almost sank as well. Fuckalicious. Okay then, so I finally managed to rob the old hero blind of all of his HP. That was Stevie wonderful. But now, the obvious problem that most of you probably have anticipated. The Storm King is physically impossible to beat with your bare fists. However, remember that no items are required to summon someone else into the game. They need to use the Blue Eye Stone for that, but you don't. Having said that, I wasn't willing to make use of a summon to kill any other enemy in the game, but in this particular case, it was literally the only possible option available to me. Unfortunately, although I did try to keep my knight in shining armor on screen while providing some sort of sports style commentary, but that almost got me killed in the process. Regardless, thank you very much Duspocky, or perhaps I should call you DusPogchamp from now on, for providing me with the Steve win over this giant flying manta ray. And with an Archdemon defeated, that means that the remainder of World 1 has opened up to us. However, I decided to clear away the road towards the Man-Eaters first.
Hello there. Hey, Vsauce, Michael here.
Which, first of all, entailed to backstab the backstabber. Yeah, that's gotta hurt. Oh, whoops. Yeah, that's gonna hurt for me as well. However, what hurted a lot more were the jump attacks from the centipedes, and they can practically clear 100 feet at a time. Regardless, if you simply run before they have the chance to aggro, you can prevent getting walled by them in the first place. Then backstabbing Red Phantom Squidward is a bit more awkward in the remake, since there is this weird stuff on the ground and in the corners pushing you back, which in fact almost got me killed, meaning I had to run all the way back in order to try again. And after that I used my favorite strategy to make my way past the remaining centipedes. Namely, just, running and improvising my way through, hoping that it would somehow turn out in my favor. But in a very tactical and strategic manner, of course. Now, I was a little worried that the gargoyles would be able to follow me all the way to the elevator when not wearing the thieves ring. And evidently they can, but the elevator arrived just in time for me to avoid them. And that's as far as I needed to go. Although heartlessly beating these 4 guys made my heart drop a beat and made the giant heart drop after I gave them a hard beating. But beating the man-eaters would be even harder. And therefore now I did go back to World 1 first. Unfortunately, this is a horrendous stage when it comes to avoiding enemies, since there's a ton of them and at multiple places you will get bottlenecked. The main problem area was the staircase. Not the first time though, because the rolling boulder did me a rock solid. But the thing is that it won't come back, and since I died after that, I would have to rely on my own balls, and the 2 assassins were putting the ass in assassin. In fact, I wasn't even able to out-stealth these sneaky scumbags Solid Snake style by punching the wall, because instead of going, huh? What was that noise? They simply didn't react at all, because apparently this can only be done by hitting the wall with an actual weapon. Which is kind of bullshit if you ask me. And because of this, I had no choice to once again rely on very tactically and strategically, with massive intellect and foresight, just do whatever and hope that it would somehow work out for me in the end. But fortunately, it did. In fact, I was quite surprised that I managed to somehow weave myself through all of the remaining enemies, given how reliant I usually am on soul remains. Of course, in regular playthroughs you can simply kill every enemy, but I don't really do regular playthroughs, as you know. Still, I didn't make it through completely unscathed, but all that matters is that I did make it through, in order to open up the shortcut. However, making it to the fog wall without getting walled in and fogged up like a motherfucker seemed practically impossible. Meaning that I would have to do the penetrator hitless. And speaking of hits, there are some hit detection issues when fighting this boss barehanded or even with fist weapons. Heck, I made a whole compilation of the whiffed uppercuts in my uppercut only challenge. However, there is one move in our arsenal that will allow us to keep the penetrator out of our arsenal. And that is the roll attack. Allowing me to make the penetrator my bitch by pimp slapping him until he goes limp. In fact, doing this felt practically effortless. I guess I should refer to myself from now on as a pimp named Slick Backhand. However, with the penetrator out-penetrated by my ferocious fisting, all remaining options for where to go next were straight up demonic. Flame Lurker, Man-Eaters or the dreaded Valley of Defilement. First of all, directly going down the scaffolding towards Flame Lurker like a moth drawn to the flame would result in losing over half your HP from fall damage alone. So I had no choice but to take the long way around. And the thing is that I could hardly even remember the last time I went that route in the first place. Could very well have been back in 2021 when I made the Soul Level 1 guide for the remake. Fortunately, it wasn't as much of a hassle as I thought it would be, as I only took a little fall damage from the final drop. Although I wasn't exactly feeling all fired up to fight Flame Lurker with my fists and without the Thieves Ring in order to break his AI and de-aggro him. But hey, how bad could it really be, right? Well, about as bad as getting hellfire injected straight into your urethra. In fact, at the end of that stream, I decided to go back for another massive farming section at the Reaper. Fortunately, I could speed things up a little bit, by also making the Skeleborgs fall down. I could have thought of that before, I suppose. But I did end up going from 33 vitality all the way to 46 vitality. And thus it was time to reap what I've sown. But my hope went all down in flames. Because in all fairness, it didn't even make that much of a difference. So why is fighting Flamelurker so immensely likely to give you a smoldering meltdown under these circumstances? I mean, the damage is bad, but not that incredibly bad, right? Well, because there are a ton of aspects that complicate this fight immensely. And thus you'll end up having a lot of irons in the fire to deal with. First of all, the lack of Thieves Ring, of course. Although the funny thing is that we somehow did manage to de-aggro him a single time. Which also meant that it was clearly a fluke and didn't amount to much. Secondly, although his explosions can be iframed, it does require really strict timing. And especially in a fight this long, it becomes essential to master that. Thirdly, his dreaded quick attacks. 9 out of 10 times I would get hit by those before I could even react in the first place. At the very least, his right hand swipe can miss you if you are directly underneath it. But the thing is, it's not like you see that attack coming in the first place. So you would have to be there preemptively. Fourth issue, and this is a ginormous one. Flamelurker can burn you without even attacking in the first place. If he hops sideways, or even away from you at times, you will take damage. Making attacking him from behind, or relying on hitting his leg in order to make him flinch with each attack, is completely unreliable under these circumstances. Because it's way more risk than reward. Fifth issue, his jump. Really hard to avoid up close. And even from a distance, punishing it with a running attack was simply not safe, as he could recover more quickly than I could. And the sixth problem, the lower his health gets, the more aggressive he becomes. Initially, you can roll into his one-handed attack for a counterattack of your own. But once his health gets about halfway, that's no longer possible, because from then on, he can combo his explosions. Meaning that you have to wait for him to do an explosion with each individual hand, followed by the two-handed explosion. So this means that the lower his health gets, the less damage opportunity you will get as well. And final issue, the lava pools throughout the arena. Doesn't deal a lot of damage, but when you only have one health bar and no healing items, in a fight that takes this long, you are already walking on thin ice, which won't exactly last that long in this kind of environment. I honestly fell so far into despair that I was legitimately questioning whether I would even be able to make it through this fight at all. And remember, since I can't use a Stone of Ephemeral Eyes, obtaining body form for more health could only be done by defeating another boss first. And nothing that remained was going to be any less of a pain than this. At the very least, that's what I thought. Heck, even if I would be willing to, summoning someone was also impossible, since that requires being in body form as well. And thus I was stuck in the smoldering and smelly sulfur-ridden bowels of hell, leading straight down to Satan's asshole. But one thing I decided to simply embrace was the length that this fight was going to take, and not take any unnecessary risks. And therefore I chose to only attack a single time per opportunity, with the exception of the two-handed explosion, where I would do a running attack followed by a regular R1. And the jump attacks I would now punish with a regular R1 instead of a running attack. Of course, it's way harder to hit them like that in the first place, and less than half of the amount of damage, but this way I was less likely to get caught in a counterattack. Slowly, but steadily, well, actually not even necessarily steadily, just really frustratingly slowly, but it was happening, I guess. I hope. Oh, he still has so much health. I'm gonna hear his boss music in my sleep. Reposition. No! Shit! Well, at least that was only the first. No! 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 No, not a good position. Oh my god, my hands are getting completely sweaty. No! Okay, reposition. Ah, shit. No follow-up. Dick. Hey, again, he doesn't do it. Why not? Give me an attack opportunity. God damn it. Yeah, follow-up? No, why not? Yeah, follow-up? It's about fucking time. Follow-up? Yeah. No, I missed! No! Unfucking believable. How the fuck did I miss? No! Ah! No! Please, no. 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 Yeah? Please be it. Win! Yeah, fucking this. Fucking. Fucking. God. Fucking. Up the. Fucking. God. Fuck. Shit. I'm going to take a victory piss. Alright. Even though that felt like pissing with a burnt urethra, I'm still happy. Alright, easy. First try. Very nice. Well, at least we get a little bit of a reprieve after that with the Dragon God. Which is never really any different on any playthrough. Well, except for the no stamina and no sorcery run from earlier this year, that is. It's merely a little slower with your fist. But once you get ready to rumble with the rubble, it is quite satisfying to uppercut the literal god of dragons into the air. Can you? Sure you can. But what I'm really not so sure about is facing off against two man-eaters at the same time, barehanded and with a single health bar, without healing items, and worst of all, without the Thieves' Ring. Because that would have allowed me to separate them at the forecaul in the back, so that I could have fought them one-on-one. However, chat convinced me to at least try to see if it's possible without the Thieves' Ring as well. I absolutely don't think this works. Even if he does de-aggro and get back to his starting position, I can't get behind him. Because the moment I try to get up the stairs, then he will notice me. I'm just gonna sit here next to an item I can't use. Well, at least that one is not aggroed on me, but I'm pretty sure if I now stand up and try to walk to the fog gate, he will immediately notice me. Wait, hold on. What the fuck? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. What the fuck? Is this possible? If only the first one comes here. Whoa, what the fuck? Holy crap. Holy crap. If I now stay over here, then I can have a one-on-one fight. Holy crap. It's possible. What the hell? Well, thank you for convincing me to try it out, because this is a game changer. Well, I did call it quits there because it was at the end of that stream. But the problem was, when I tried it again the next day, it didn't work this time. In fact, I tried over and over and I did not get the same results. Until, out of sheer desperation, I tried it without waiting on the ledge. And instead just sticking at the forecaul in the back. And somehow, for some reason, it actually worked? What the fuck? How is that even possible? Problem is, I played very poorly, so I had to reset again. And when I tried again, it didn't work. What the fuck is this? So basically, abusing the broken AI of the man-eaters is broken in and of itself. Brokeception or something. Like, it is broken, but it's also inconsistent when trying to make use of the fact that it's broken. Well, eventually I did manage to do it again. Somehow. So this time I really had to make sure that I was not going to fuck up anymore. After all, even when separate from each other, they have a ton of health that I need to go through. And I need to make my own health bar outlast their 2 health bars. Ah, now I have it. I have it. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, I have it still. That's good. Oh, whoa! How the hell did I not... Fuck. I need to preserve my health after all. Oh, it takes so many hits. Well, at least he can't shoot magic anymore. He can still do his... the beam from his mouth, but... Oh, how the hell did I miss? No! I mean, the more running attacks, the better, because they do more than double damage after all. You know, if at some point they simply just all of a sudden stop flying and just fall through the bridge into the abyss and die, I wouldn't even be surprised. I also wouldn't be angry. And I wouldn't even be surprised. This fight is so unimaginably broken. Oh, come on! It was away from me. Fuck off. Shit. Half of my health bar left. And more than half to go. Yeah, it's definitely easier than Flame Lurker, but it's definitely an endurance test. Maybe to endure the jankiness of the stupid AI. Okay, die already, please. No. Oh, shit. Almost. Almost. No! There. Got him. That's one. That is one. Oh, come on. Now I have another tail to cut. I don't know if it's better to fight him here, but you know what? Let's go back to here. That's what we did with the first one. Let's do it with the second one as well. Hey, hello! He just randomly... Fuck. I need to preserve my health. Well, if I really wanted to preserve my health, I wouldn't do challenge runs like these, actually. But that's besides the point, I suppose. Oh, the tail's off. Okay, the tail's off. Good. Tail is off. 45% or something. Ooh, I thought I was too early. Good thing that I wasn't. Poor Priscilla. The stuff I put her through. I don't know if it is the 60 the 60 FPS or anything else, but the double-handed attack. For some reason on the PS3 version, that hitbox felt wonkier than here, and I can't imagine that Bluepoint actually fixed anything, given that they fixed nothing about this fight. So I wonder what causes that. Maybe it's the 60 FPS. I don't know, but it is interesting. Okay, we're getting very, very close. Running attack. Ooh, don't fuck up at the final hit. What the fuck? Okay. Oh, don't get greedy now. Don't fuck up at the final hit. Okay, one more attack. Fuck you! Uppercut to the jaw. You won't be eating anything anymore. With the man-eaters biting the dust, the next obstacle wasn't so much the old monk himself, but the staircase before him. Yeah, good luck not taking any damage when only using your bare fist. In fact, when it came to the Red Phantom Mind Flayer, I had to actually lure it first all the way down the stairs, so that I could move past him, and then quickly, perhaps a little bit too quickly and recklessly, take the piss out of the remaining centipedes, before he could come back up the stairs, and then I had to squeeze myself past the second one, in order to quickly enter the boss arena. Unfortunately, with not much HP left, meaning that I thought that there was simply no way I would come out victoriously. However, there is one weakness that we both share. Our kidneys. Me in the sense of having to take a piss way too often, especially during a stream, aka a stream, basically streamception. But in the boss's case, getting backstabbed over and over again. As long as I paid attention to the magic projectiles, which act independent of the boss's movement. Very important to keep that in mind. But this way I could use his actual movement, since he has the intelligence of a bowel movement, In order to get a backstab after a running attack, a roll, an uppercut, or whenever he is otherwise basically passive. In order to chain backstab him into oblivion. Double kidney punch followed by what we should probably relabel as an old monkey punch. Which acquired me not only victory, but also the final level to reach the vitality cap of 50. But that does entail that after I bunked the monk, it was time for the inevitable. The world I had been putting off for the entirety of the playthrough so far. Proto-Blighttown, the valley of defile mental problems. Since it's the home of poison that I have no ability to cure, and leeches that will drain my health, but regenerate their own. Well, first of all, I would need to get down to the boss while holding on to as much health as possible. So first I took the path on the right in order to avoid the first spear guy. And then quickly yet carefully made my way down to avoid fall damage. However, this is exactly the kind of place where you would want to use soul remains, because there are enemies everywhere, and there are specifically 2 spear guys who are bound to fog you up at the first fog wall, as they are specifically blocking your path.
Look how much room, look how much room! How can I be stuck when there's so much room?
And thus I already took damage. But at least you can roll into the bloated ticks in order to push them away without bursting them. And then I simply ran past the rats and kept running in order to avoid the falling rocks and to make it to the upper floor as quickly as possible to kill the spear guy on top. However, that does entail getting chased by the big guy from down below. However, by rolling past the ticks and quitting out, very cheap but also very necessary, I could simply reset the enemy's position, as the most tricky part is still up ahead. The bridge where you cannot push yourself past the enemies. Instead, after clearing away the ticks, which require you to immediately roll out of range, because when they burst they would instantly poison you otherwise. And then I had to meticulously lure the 2 spear guys over one by one without aggroing the big guy in the back or any of the enemies down below. Unfortunately, spear attacks are quick and difficult to avoid, so I took another hit. But fortunately things went better with the second one. Although to be fair, the lock-on nearly screwed me over there. But after all of that, I could run past the final big guy in order to make my way to the leechmonger with about 80% of my health bar remaining. However, would that be enough? Not to mention, would my damage output be enough given this boss's healing ability? Because remember that in body form I inflict 20% less damage than in soul form. However, there is a way to prevent Leechmonger from healing altogether, because the healing is in response to damage dealt to the center of his body. So if you aim downwards and have a short reach, which I obviously have with my bare fist, you can exclusively hit him on his, let's call them feet, those appendages sticking out at the base of his body. It's a Miyazaki game, we'll just call it feet. Especially because that is exactly what allows me to defeat him by circumventing his healing ability altogether. Turning this into an actual DPS race, given that my health bar automatically was draining away because of standing in the water. However, as long as only your legs are covered, the health drain is quite slow. But if you get hit by one of the leech balls, it will be like having leeches on your balls and you will get drained very quickly. So as long as I could prevent that from happening, and by leaving this part of the game for the endgame, even when using nothing at all, I still managed to win the DPS race with about 10% of my health left to spare. However, with the leeches no longer among us, the part I dreaded most was still up ahead, namely the long trip through the poison swamp without any healing items, without a cure for poison and without any poison resistance. Because I do know that if you have poison resistance, you can go from tiny island to prevent getting poisoned altogether. But in my case, I couldn't even rely on that. And to make things worse, I tried to roll past the enemies near the fork wall, one freaking step too early. At least according to the game. Meaning I couldn't roll at all and I took damage on top of being poisoned. So yeah, then I was really getting worried, because taking the left route requires you to go past a horde of enemies, and the alternative is to keep going through the swamp, resulting in getting poisoned again as soon as the first proc ran out. However, whereas in the original I would have moved all the way around the edges as to not get lost in the dark, in the remake your visibility is not nearly as limited, allowing for a much shorter route, and thus saving valuable time. However, when I finally emerged from the swamp, I was still poisoned, my health was getting low, and I almost immediately took damage from another enemy. So despite just emerging from one, I was feeling absolutely swamped, and I was in fact losing hope at this point. However, then the poison wore off, meaning that as long as I could prevent taking any more damage from enemies, I should be able to make it to the shortcut. Now I don't know whether it was intentional, but the hit detection on the mosquitoes, who really suck in the original, where many short-range melee attacks simply couldn't hit them, but this has been fixed in the remake. So I was quite buzzing myself when I could easily sucker punch them in the sucker. And then, with some patience, some clever use of the environment, and a well-timed roll, not even the patented Miyazaki poison swamp could halt my progress. World 5 using nothing is in fact possible with 50 vitality. Having said that, although you might not expect it, but the dirty Colossus can be... Oh, son of a bitch, I got poisoned right before getting to the fog wall. So now I will have to go all the way back to the Archstone and hope to not die in the process. After all, I'm trying to preserve my humanity, and Nexual Binding is an item that I am not allowed to use. Well, I can play dirty myself, so I decided to make a cloud save in front of the fog wall. However, this would completely bite me in the ass in a minute, resulting in colossal failure, after a colossal victory. Because I accidentally reloaded the cloud save after defeating the boss instead of overriding it. Meaning that I had to defeat the boss all over again. Not every cloud save has a silver lining, it seems. I suppose time for another Flying Dutchman moment. Well, apart from doing myself dirty, when it comes to the Colossus, although his moveset is very simplistic, getting covered by flies has a similar effect to the leeches of the Leechmonger. And burning them off also costs health, and there is a danger of getting stuck in a loop, as creating distance from the boss will cause him to fly off the handle and launch more flies towards you than that you can handle. However, if you remember the dreaded SL1 New Game Plus AoE only challenge from 2 years ago, a major problem I had there were the random flies coming from the boss's head, which can result in an unpredictable hit that you can hardly even see coming in the first place, not to mention that it tracks you even if that means that the flies would have to travel right through the boss's body. However, this boss has a dirty colossal secret. If you do not break the wooden armor on the left hand of the Colossus, that random fly attack will never happen. And that is a wonderful thing, because we already have to get our hands dirty enough as it is. No need to uncover his, especially since we had to defeat this boss twice in a row already. There we go. It was so much fun, we did it again. It was so much fun, we did it again. It's nice to see a content creator give to the audience. Exactly, that's just how I roll. Now, despite the inherent sadness of the situation where you have to act as the bad guy against Estrella and her loyal White Knight, I was pulling no punches. Not sure he would even be able to face his maiden afterwards, or how I'm not hurting my hands on his helmet, more than his face underneath it. However, given that he does in fact move back towards Estrella, it's best to prevent him from doing that by getting in front of him. But the thing is that often makes him not attack at all. And because of the fact that he can also parry you, I decided to provoke him with a headbutt. And what the fuck? He can parry your face? He is making me the headbutt of the joke. And that is somehow even more of a slap in the face than what I did to him. Fortunately, I still managed to save face by just barely surviving our face-off. However, afterwards, neither of us could go and face his maiden, because with my health this low, the plague would kill me before I could even get to her. But not to worry though, Garl is not the actual boss after all, he is merely an NPC. So by quitting out and healing at the Archstone, I could simply re-enter with full health and Villain would still be dead. And that made me happy. And then Estrella decided to enter her own existence, and that made me even happier. But what made me the happiest is that we are now near the end of the playthrough. Although, given who is still left, that means that we are far from finished. Or perhaps we are finished in a different sense of the word. Because here we are, the final obstacle. The ruler over all land. The all-land lord of Boletaria. And the boss with the highest health pool in the game. If you take his defenses into account as well. Meaning that this would be a long fight. But as long as I punish the charges with a roll attack and the AoEs with a running attack, it would in principle merely be a matter of being patient. Unfortunately, whoever designed Alain's AI was probably a mental patient. Because this fight can be glitchy as all hell, with his Proto-Ornstein charge where he randomly dashes all over the place. Or starts up a new attack animation when he shouldn't even be able to, yet. And when a fight takes this long, damage taken from that starts to add up. Causing me to have to reset the fight multiple times when getting to low health. Not to mention that even when his AI doesn't suffer a seizure, he has multiple ways of retaliating after punishing his AoE attack. And if you misread what he does, you can easily get roll cut. So I didn't merely require some good RNG as far as glitchiness is concerned. I didn't merely require patience because of the length of the fight, but I needed to stay focused for the entire duration as well. But hey, I have come too far to surrender now, because I may have nothing, but I can do anything. Is this that? Yes, it is! It is! Old King Alain with nothing! Old King Alain with fucking nothing. He has all in his name, I have nothing in his name, but I'm still superior. 0 is greater than everything, apparently. Oh my god.
How did you defeat my demonic reflection?
Yeah, I wonder that too, given all the fucking glitching that he does in his movement. And there we are. After sticking the all landing, I no longer have nothing. I have a crowning achievement worthy of a king. And after a more or less ceremonial battle with Trueland, my debt has been paid. However, there is still one thing that haunts me. Namely the fact that I couldn't beat Phalanx. So I first tried to see if I could perhaps defeat it on New Game Plus. So that I at least managed to include every boss in the game. However, that wasn't that much of an improvement due to Demon Souls having a pretty steep increase in scaling from New Game to New Game Plus, compared to a lot of the other games in the franchise. Yeah, that wasn't happening either. So, one final alternative concession is to change the premise of using absolutely nothing to using only a starting gift as your only form of equipment. Because you can start with 5 firebombs, which would allow me to thin out the herd and then finish off the rest with my bare hands. However, 5 firebombs don't do as much as you might expect. So I still had to reset over and over again until I managed to actually take out a substantial amount of the hoplites this way. But even then, it was still me versus, well, I suppose now half an army of hoplites, with a tiny margin of error for what still would prove to be an immensely lengthy ordeal. Something that at least helped was to make use of the shape of the room and the 10 pillars inside of it. So what I would do is lure the boss from one end of the room to the other end, hoping that some of the hoplites would linger behind, in order to create a sort of safe-ish attack opportunity on one of them. Still quite RNG dependent, but it did help a lot. Regardless, they still tend to cluster together or turn towards me too soon. Or heck, when their health gets low, they automatically move back to the boss in order to heal themselves. Speaking of healing though, apparently there is an unspecified number of hoplites required to heal the boss herself. Because after a while, her health wasn't regenerating anymore, even though quite a few hoplites were still alive. But still, trying to sneak hits in was simply way too risky, as the remaining hoplites could easily do the same to me. But after almost 20 minutes of running back and forth like this, I did manage to make light work of the final hoplites. A small hop for them, a giant leap towards victory for me. And that is, unfortunately, the best I could do. Not using absolutely nothing, but instead 5 measly yet all too important firebombs, aka starting gift only. Now, I never want to declare things impossible in these games, so maybe it can be done using truly nothing. The running back and forth trick at least helped, but I suppose I should leave that as a challenge to my fellow challenge runners. Perhaps someone out there, anyone, will be able to find a way to make it happen. But I'm at least still proud with what I did manage to achieve. I made a promise, and I paid my dues. That's what I chose to give back to all the people who gave with such generosity during the charity event. Heck, I even sacrificed the maiden, my only light in the empty void, for you guys. But if there's anything that you all taught me during the charity event, then it would have to be the beauty of giving for the sake of others. And also probably to not make any hasty vows in the future.